Welcome, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here with you as we're talking about digital parenting, nurturing healthy online habits as a family. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Milovidov, and I'm a lawyer from California. I have lived in France now for the past 29 years, and I just moved to London last year. I am an international speaker on digital parenting, child online safety, digital well-being, and previously I was a consultant. Actually, I still do a little bit of consulting here and there, but on a smaller scale. I consulted for the Council of Europe, for the Ministry of Qatar, a few other places that I'm sure I'll mention as I'm speaking to you. And I'm also currently corporate counsel at the Lego Group, where I'm helping them with their digital games and metaverse experiences. So it's really exciting. And so all of this has been the past 12, 15 years of work in this area. And so I'm just going to share with you some trends, some challenges, and then I'm going to open up the floor so you can ask questions and we can, have an exchange. So I think really the first thing is always to sort of set the landscape and to make sure that you realize as parents, as grandparents, aunts, uncles, caregivers, that you are not alone. There are lots of parents that are having these same issues, these same questions, again, over screen time, how much is too much, how little is too little, because for some reason, a lot of people think that children must have screens. They have to become digital natives and digital citizens at an early age. And there's a time for everything. Stranger danger happens to be something that parents are always thinking of, saying, oh, what if my child is contacted by an unknown person? When in reality, if you talk to children, they will tell you that it's not the strangers, it's them being bullied by their own friends, or friends saying mean things to them online. So it's not so much what we think is happening, it's what our children are actually experiencing. And of course, I think mental health has just become a huge topic in the past few years, where we're really concerned about the digital well-being of our children online. Now, I'm going to try to just go quickly to really give you, again, just some background here as to what's happening. So when I'm talking about trends, I'm talking about things like where they see influencers, right? Everybody wants to be a social media influencer. There are challenges. There are people taking selfies all the time. Then we also see just the increase of social media. There's always something, whether it's TikTok or OnlyFans, which is really an adult-only site where you can meet and talk with singers or performers, and sometimes it can be inappropriate content as well. But you can find that on any social media channel. Instagram as well is having a huge lift as far as how many children, especially young girls, are on the website, on using the platform. They've had a bit of issues with body image, with social image, because Instagram is very much a photos and showing who you are and trying to look your best. So sometimes you will find young women taking 50 to 100 pictures just to get that one photo and to share it, which then leaves other young girls to sit there and think, oh, her life is so perfect, when it's really not, because it took hours to get there. Online video games they're still trending. We're still seeing a lot of young boys. Ironically enough, we usually find that boys are the ones who are leaning towards the online video games, and we have more girls having issues with social media. Not to say that there are not girl gamers, because there are, and not to say that there are not boys having issues on social media, because there are, but tendency in the research is that we have seen that it's very gendered. I would say that one of the biggest issues that I've seen with online video games is just the idea that children are using games that are not appropriate for their age. So for example, you'll have 11-year-olds, 13-year-olds playing 18 plus games like GTA, which is called Grand Theft Auto, or Call of Duty, which is a shooter game. You can just really see that this is what the boys are gravitating towards. And before you say, "Oh, but Elizabeth, wait a minute, I don't buy them any games. They don't play Call of Duty. They have no idea what Grand Theft Auto is," then I'm going to say, but do you let your child go on YouTube? Because they're seeing the games there. They are watching other players play the game so they can still know exactly what's happening. They can still see that inappropriate content, but they're just seeing it someplace else. All of this means that you're going to be having regular conversations with your little people about what they're doing online. Something else that we're seeing as a huge trend is the tech companies are now being called out on some of their issues. For example, are they creating things with safety by design in mind? Meaning, are they creating social media platforms? Are they creating apps and games where really the basis is thinking, how can we keep children safe? How can we make sure that children thrive online? As you can imagine, a lot of companies, they are profit maximizers, so they may not always be thinking about what is in the best interest of the child, which is a requirement by the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So we're seeing more lawsuits, as you may have seen in the United States, with the Senate bringing TikTok, Instagram, and a few others in front of the Congress people so they could ask questions about what is happening. We're not finished. There will still be more. We're seeing more and more laws as well. So this is where I'm talking about governments. We're seeing online harms. The Online Safety Act was passed here in the United Kingdom. In the United States, we have the Kids Online Safety Act. We have the COPPA, which is Children's Online Protection Privacy Act. There are so many things that are happening, and we're starting to see more regulation, more oversight, because they've realized that there is a problem. They've realized that they've just kind of had a social experiment with our children, putting all of these things out there, and now we kind of need to put the genie back in the bottle and figure out what will help our children thrive. Okay, so then there are always challenges online, right? So some of the things that we see that are, some of the riskier issues are fake news, misinformation. Now with deep fakes and AI generated deep fakes, we are seeing just recently in the United States, there were some, I believe the boys were in Florida, where they had created some deep fakes with inappropriate content of their classmates. So basically they had taken their faces and manipulated it using computers to create inappropriate content. They got caught, they got in trouble, but we're going to start seeing more and more of this type of internet generated content happening, especially with elections happening, with wars, with just chances for propaganda. Critical thinking is always on my list as a challenge. And the reason why is because if critical thinking is for me is just the key to all of this. If every time as a parent we ask the question, who, what, where, when, why are we giving this device, this game, this app to our children? And if we engaged in a conversation with our children about it, really it would make both sides feel a lot better. Parents would understand that their children are a little bit more savvy than they think, not perfectly, but still that they do understand some things. And children would know that their parents are not trying to shut them down or keep them off of technology forever. I think the best way I can explain that to you is you have all been at a birthday party, I'm sure, where you have seen that one child and you know that the parents do not let them have any sugar or any Coca-Cola or anything because that child is not enjoying the party. That child is sitting there at the table eating all the candy, trying to drink all the Coca-Cola, etc. So I think that here, joking aside, one of the things that we have seen is that absolute restrictions also make it a sort of forbidden fruit and it becomes even more desirable to children. So we have to figure out how to balance that as well. Artificial intelligence, we use artificial intelligence all the time with our Gmails, even with our own smartphones, when you see things like autocorrect, right? So it's just a matter of understanding that these technologies are here. They're not frightening. Even with generative AI, the idea that we are able to create things that never existed before, it's exciting, But we can do this by working with our children, by again using that critical thinking and trying to figure out how to go forward. It doesn't matter what the technology is, because it's changing all the time. If I were to teach you how to learn every single feature on Snapchat, for example, which is a type of social media, if I taught you how to lock down everything, the next thing you know, it's going to be a new social media platform. So that's not the true solution. It's understanding how to go forward with all of these conversations and talking about personal information, online privacy, resilience. These are the challenges that we are consistently working with. The last topic is something that is very important, and I know that it is always a sensitive issue, and that is the types of inappropriate content that can be out there online. As religious communities, there are so many things that we do not want to think about, that we do not want to think that our children are seeing or engaging with. And unfortunately, even if our children are not searching for it, sometimes this content arrives in their social media feeds without them even looking for it. On the right, you'll see a reference for a website in the United States that has free trainings for parents, and it's called Culture Reframed. And this is for a lot of that inappropriate content of trying to take some of the fears away from parents so that way they can engage with their children on these sensitive issues. So just really quickly, what is digital parenting? Why are we even here and discussing all of this? When I first started doing this, people thought that digital parenting meant that I was going to tell them how they can use apps to parent their child. And I was like, no, that's not quite it. Really, this is really just parenting in general, but in the digital age, looking at technology and really looking at the law, because I am a lawyer, and looking at the law to figure out what are our rights and responsibilities and what can we do. And so one of the ways to best do these things is to have open communication, to really to talk with your children. And you can say, oh, but I've got so many things. I know, I know. But as you sit there and say to them, how was your day today? You can also say, how was your online day? It's just that simple, regular involvement in their activities to understand what's going on. You cannot support them if you don't know. And I promise you, you do not need to be tech savvy. You don't have to understand everything about technology to be able to support your child because you have age, maturity, wisdom, experience, and that will come into great use. You're going to try to protect your child's digital reputation, which includes their footprint, their identity. You're thinking about how are you sharing posts on social media? Are you sharing, oversharing, or what we can sometimes say oversharing online? You're also going to learn about some of the opportunities that are out there, and you're going to learn with your child, with your teenager, with your young person to say, hey, what's this about? I'm interested. Contrary to what you might believe, they will be happy to tell you and show you a little bit about what they're doing. Not everything, but they're pretty proud that they're able to code or that they understand how to use Chat GPT, which again is a type of generative AI. So really engage in those conversations. Lastly, you're protecting your children from online harm. I mean, this is the name of the game, and you don't have to be able to identify every single harm that's coming to be able to protect your child, to be able to give them strategies to say, if something doesn't feel right to you, let's talk about it. Let's look at it together. Or if you can't talk to me about it, what about one of your teachers, an aunt, a religious figure, somebody that is a trusted adult who you believe can also help your child? Because a lot of times what we've seen is that children may encounter some harm, and because they don't speak to an adult, they think they can handle it themselves. It spirals into something else. And all of that can be prevented. So I know that we've just come out of a pandemic, but I really wanted to stress that, post-pandemic, we still have to pat ourselves on the back because we did have some wins. We were able to handle remote work, remote learning. And again, these are for the people and the communities that had access to technology because not everyone did. We were able to stay connected with our family and friends. And for the most part, we were able to manage distractions because you had to. So I always want us to kind of think of post-pandemic, as after that holiday meal where perhaps we overindulged and we all knew, oh, we just had a bit too much, and now we can get back to track and realize what were some of those benefits. So some of the benefits that we should have learned and we should have understood just in general about digital safety, right? We should all have just a sense immediately that when we're thinking about a device, a platform, social media, a game, whatever, your first thought should be parental controls. Will this work for my child? Will this work for my teen? Will this work for my young adult? And also, don't forget to think about your child, where they are with as far as their developmental abilities. We always say things like age appropriate, and it's not always about age, because you can have an 11-year-old that is incredibly mature and that could probably handle something else, whereas you can have an older child who's not as mature. I also want to stress the importance of neurodiversity here, and that there may be circumstances where you want to put parental controls on, and where we're just not talking about the different norms that we normally see. And I also think that parental controls, keep in mind that there's a time and a season. So for example, putting parental controls on a game for a 9-year-old is going to be much easier than trying to do that for a 19-year-old, right? So choose your battles. And again, it's no secret, but once your child is able to type and go onto search engines, they will be able to go onto Google and write, how do I uninstall parental controls? And there goes that, right? So again, it's a matter of having those communications and having those strategies and talking with them. Me personally, I find that parental controls work very, very well for 9 years old and under. After that, you're having conversations with them and you're showing them together why you're putting parental controls together. And you're showing them why they don't need that inappropriate content. They don't need friends and friends. And most times they will agree because they'll realize, oh, my mom, my dad, my caregiver, they'll let me play a bit more if they see that I can do so safely. So give them a chance to shine. Critical thinking, I can never say enough about critical thinking, always asking questions. I do think it's important that we understand privacy settings, that as soon as you are handed a device, a platform, that you go and check the settings and you go to private as much as possible. And when your devices do updates, you go back and check those settings, because again, corporations are profit maximizers. And so when they do updates, they may not always think to reset back to what you had done. They want to leave things open for you to experience the best that they have to offer, which means you might have to go back in and check those settings again. And conversations, I will never stop talking about how important it is not only to speak with your own children, but to talk to your community, to talk with other parents. So, for example, I always like to say, when we had our young babies, we remembered that if we didn't know which food to give as the first solid food, you would talk to an auntie, you would talk to a sister, you would talk to another community member. Do you remember the scandal about should the baby sleep on the stomach, should the baby sleep on the back, right? So what did we do? We talked amongst each others and say, well, what works for you? Or swaddling a baby, all of these things. And then as the children got older, whoa, what school are you thinking about sending them to? You weren't just sitting in a vacuum deciding on your own. So you shouldn't do the same thing with technology. You are not alone on being the first person to decide, should I give them a smartphone? Should I give them a gaming console? Other parents are going through it too. Find out from them what they did. Have those conversations. So digital well-being is so important. This has become a theme now. I would say the past 3 to 4 years, we're talking less about digital safety and more about digital well-being, right? Because one of the things is that child online protection experts have learned that when children are online, yes, they may encounter more risk, but as they learn how to handle those risks, they also become more resilient. And so they're better able to just handle what's coming down. So for example, again, taking it into an offline world context, if we are taking our child to the park and we are walking them and we're showing them, this is the crosswalk, oh, there's a dog that's not on a leash, etc. As you are exposing them to these things, you are able to make them more resilient for when they have to walk to the park alone. So it's this same sort of idea here, and the same thing with well-being. When we are showing them about being mindful, about understanding how they feel when they're online and offline, and a lot of people say, oh, it's all blurred. And I have to just disagree, because I know that when I turn off my computer, I will be offline. I will go back and join my family for a meal. I will not, there is nothing blurred about that. And I think that we have to realize, and we have to privilege more of this offline time and connecting with our families, even as much as I love technology. So when I'm talking about well-being, I'm talking about managing those digital distractions, looking at productivity apps that can help you by, silencing your notifications or putting your phone in grayscale, which means it looks so ugly, it's not all colorful and swirly. Understanding health effects. Again, talk to your children, ask them, how does your neck feel? How are your thumbs when they're gaming? Oh, I love it when my computer does that. Did you see that? It's one of those Apple effects. Don't ask. But you're going to talk to them about understanding the different effects. You're going to help them take back control, right? And by that, it's when they're in a group chat, when they are talking with friends online, or even playing online games. If something doesn't feel right to them, give them strategies to get out, so that way they can take back control and enjoy that online experience. And again, disconnecting is so hugely important. More than ever, we need to disconnect. We need to connect with our faith. We need to just have that time of peace. And when I say disconnect to connect, I also know that on my own phone, I have, for example, a Bible app, and I have a daily plan. And so I am on my phone doing these things, but we can also disconnect and pick up a paper and do things this way. Again, it's for all of us to find that balance and to realize that there are opportunities online, but within reason. So one of the things that I like to do for parents and caregivers is just to provide some quick tips for the different age groups, because while I asked earlier in the chat, what are the ages that we're dealing with, I still want to make sure I've covered everybody in case they're listening to this as a recording afterwards. So some very, again, quick tips for parents and caregivers of children who are aged newborns to 3 years old. Really, you have to understand privacy and data protection. There are statistics that show in the United Kingdom, I believe it was done by Parent Zone, that by the time a child is 5 years old, they have more than 1,000 images of themselves online. The child is not posting those images themselves, right? It's parents, grandparents, it's schools, it is your child being in the end of the year festival and somebody's taking pictures and posting it online. So you need to be their digital guardian, and you need to think about their digital reputation and limit that oversharing. If you have smart devices in your home, a smart assistant, even something with your smartphone that has Siri or Google on it, hey Google, you have to be aware that they are listening because they're waiting for the wake word. And so just to understand how to use these things, how to change wake words, baby monitors, the same thing. Read the technical descriptions that they provide you, so that way you will know who has access to the content on that baby feed. Be critical of some of the baby products, because right now the world is exploding in digital fun, if you will. So what you're seeing on your screen is really something that existed. You could find it on Amazon, and it was, yes, an iPad to train a baby for potty training, right? Yeah, wow, exactly, Ravinder. I agree. There's something for everything, right? There are connected diapers and pacifiers. What you see on the top, believe it or not, this was actually somebody's brilliant idea. They said, while I'm looking at my smartphone, I can feed my baby at the same time. Really, when I see things like this, I really do want to scream and say, you need that eye-to-eye contact with the baby. We need to be talking. We need that face-to-face, but we know that. So just want to show you that these things, they do exist. when we're talking about children aged 4 to 8, these kids are they're starting to get that swiping stuff down. They want a tablet, they want to play around. Again, this is fine, but understand you can put those parental controls on, get in there and understand what's happening on YouTube, YouTube Kids, and set boundaries. For example, rather than let your child watch YouTube for hours, you can go and, for example, look at something that's on CBBS and pick one episode, and they can see it starts and finishes. There are ways to really guide them and be smart about the use where it's a win-win for both them and for you. Because let's face it, right now, YouTube and things that we find on tablets is overpowering what we've normally seen on television and on screens. And if we're not talking about YouTube and YouTube Kids, then there's Netflix, there's Disney Plus, there's Amazon Prime, there is streaming for everything. And really, we need to just make sure that these things are not electronic babysitters. Um, Another thing that I'm showing on the screen is Ryan's World. This little boy has 27 million subscribers. He is a YouTuber. It's a parental account. Most kids know who he is. Really, again, this is what I'm talking about, setting boundaries and starting and talking about digital citizenship, about what you want your children to do. When they watch and engage in content like this, I promise you, they all want to become YouTubers as well, because it looks like fun. And it just seems like, oh, I can make money for the whole family. And there's a bit more to it. There was a study done a few years ago where they asked children in China and children in the United States, what would you like to be when you grow up? Would you like to be a YouTuber, or would you like to be an astronaut? The children in China, bless them, they said astronauts. I'm sending my children to school there because my own boys, even though we were in France, they are half American, and they said YouTubers. And I just said, I cannot believe this. Even with me in this profession, they still prefer YouTubers over astronauts. So you can see that we all have a little bit of work to do. Parents of children aged 9 to 12, again, this is that fun age now where they're starting to become more and more independent. They think they know, but they still don't know. And you have to realize that there is just the whole attraction of social media, right? Social media is in general for 13 and up. Please, if your child is asking you, you can tell them no. This is like if they asked you, can I drive your car, or can I have a sip of a beer? The answer is no. I don't understand why we kind of changed and said, oh, sure, okay. Same thing with 18 plus video games. It's really simple. So I think we need to understand that. And even if you lock them down and your children understand what they cannot have on their devices, please understand that when they go to school, when they go on that sleepover or on that play date, that there will be another child with a tablet who will very happily show them the social media sites, the Five Nights at Freddy's, the 18 plus games that they don't need to see. And so you have to give them strategies again to say, oh, yes, but in my house, we don't do that. Or no, my mom would kill me if she knew. My boys had a very easy out because they'd say, my mom's a lawyer. Can't do that. They can't see that. So you say whatever works for you. Again, I'd already mentioned some of the streaming and content and influence. You will see them everywhere. And I really want, especially at this age, for you to remember that you can start those conversations, even on those uncomfortable subjects. And I know, because I have been asked them myself, our children will hear things in the schoolyard, on the bus, on the tube. They will come and ask us questions. And we are doing them a disservice if we don't find a way to answer, or at least to say, I will answer that at a different time, etc. You have to provide something. And the reason why is because now they can ask Siri, they can say, hey, Google, they can get an answer that may not identify with our own culture, values, beliefs, expectations. So really, you have to step up and do the uncomfortable stuff as well. This is just a quick screen to show you every minute of the day, all the content that is out there. There is just so much. Of course, it is hard for us to compete with this. And I believe this statistic is from last year. So every minute, 6 million people are online shopping. Every minute, 167 million videos on TikTok. Really, I mean, this is just 2 million Snapchats are sent. And I know these numbers have increased. So this is what we are fighting against, to grab attention, because there's just so much out there. And when you have it all in your pocket in a smartphone, you're just entertained. The next time you're in London or on a bus, just look around you. I'm always amazed when I see everyone on their smartphone. You just see them all looking down. I'm like, there could be, a beautiful sunrise. There could be, I don't know, angels coming down and singing to everyone, and people would miss it because they're on TikTok. So I don't know, people. I'm just telling you, we need to start looking up a bit more. So for children who are age 13 to 17, again, this is the harder age, because the majority of teens, they do have access to a smartphone. In US, Europe, UK, it's more than 90%. And we know that 45% are online constantly, and 40% are online several times a day. If we add in the fact that schools now require a bit of digital presence, because they're doing their homework online, that's even more. This does not mean that you should freak out. It just means we're going to be looking for ways to have balance and boundaries. There will also be tougher issues at this age for teenagers because of body image, again, for inappropriate content, relationship issues. Does she like me? Does he like me? Sending messages, trying to figure these things out. Again, those are some of the questions that we want to answer before Google answers them for you. On the left, you see an image from a Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma. I find that this was really powerful to explain to teenagers what can happen with algorithms, and how your social media feeds are curated to send you the content that you're looking at. So for example, if I were to go on TikTok right now and I started looking at, I don't know, magicians, for example, TikTok will then continue to send me more and more accounts from magicians. So you can imagine anything that's positive, anything that's bringing them joy to their lives. If they're looking for that, they will get more of that content. If, for example, they happen to see something and just a couple of seconds, they look at it, they will start getting more of that content that takes them down a rabbit hole. Our teens do know how to get rid of that content. They know how uh, to dislike it, so that way they don't get it, because of course they're always training the algorithms. So you have to remind them, get rid of the content that you don't want to see. This movie is a great reminder, a great way to have a conversation, to talk with your teen, and to just continue to help them create that positive online identity. I'm not talking so much about the older children here, but just a quick point is that for those of you who do have older children and young people, they can use technology to create that positive online identity, to use that for university applications, for when job interviewers are looking at them. If they have a positive social media feed, it's great. And I promise you, recruiters are going to be looking. That's the first thing they do, is just go onto Google and look at somebody's social media feeds. You can go into you can just even go into the site itself and search the name, and there you can see what that person is posting about, what they like, who they follow. These things are very telling. So I think there's ways to keep our social media as respectful as possible, and to really show ourselves, our true authentic selves, on our social media feeds as well. Cyberbullying is something that a lot of parents are asking me about, and I just wanted to make sure to share this tip sheet. I know that Evine is going to give you the link to cyberbullying.org, so you can have this for yourself. They are a fantastic research center in the United States, and they really just have some quick tips for parents about what to do when your child is cyberbullied, and what to do if your child, unfortunately, cyberbullies others. And the reason why I want to stress why this is so important is because I don't even remember how many years now that I think about it. For, I'll say 2 to 3 years, I was working at European SchoolNet, which was funded by the European Commission, and they were looking at across Europe at issues that affect children. So with helplines, why were children calling into these helplines? And I promise you, for at least 6, 7 years in a row, if not more than it now, cyberbullying was the #1 issue. Children were not calling in about stranger danger. They were not calling in about gambling addiction or any of the things that we think are about. They were calling in to get help for being bullied. So this is a huge issue. It's still today. And when you think about what we see online in our own social media feeds, even on the news, where we see politicians and government heads, just kind of losing it and saying, bullying each other, quite frankly, you can see how it just trickles down to the schoolyard. So I wanted to share these resources. I'm almost finished, just I think 3 more slides, because one of the things I want to stress is inclusivity. I think it is so important for all of us to be able to find resources in our native language when we can. And I just want to make sure that you know that there are so many resources out there. So this is again from the Safer Internet Centers. This is from Europe. So they have, these are the Safer Internet Center Plus programs. So these are other countries that also are trying to share best practices in online safety. And again, you'll have the link for that website along with the original one, which I think is great because this is the 27 European countries that I was talking about. So to give you an example, I'm sure you probably already heard of it, but in the United Kingdom, we have the Internet Watch Foundation. That is the hotline. That's where you call if you have a really hot issue where you need police help. Then there's the helplines, which are run with I believe it's ChildNet, and also the UK Safer Internet Center that also does the awareness centers. So there are always 3 in every country. When I was in France, it was e-Enfance, and at any rate, different countries have their things. And they're always based around the same principles. They're just adapted for language and culture in those places, in those countries. Another point I think I'd mentioned earlier that I had done some work for the Ministry of Qatar. And so here on the top is a guide to YouTube that I helped them write. On the bottom, on the left is a digital parenting guide. And then on the far right is a digital parenting for newborns, right? So talking about what do you do when someone is pregnant and they want to post those ultrasound photos on social media. And I'm like, be careful, be careful. So, and what was really great about this project was that I was able to look at some of the pillars of Islam and incorporate that into digital parenting. I've also done some work with parenting associations in, I want to say Chennai in India, but I didn't have a lot of content, so I couldn't share any of those things, but all around the world, we're all looking at the same issues. We are all the same. So just to end up with some of the resources that I've mentioned, the digital parenting community on Facebook, that is my own community where you're more than welcome to join and ask questions, see what parents are looking at. I always find it funny to be on Facebook because I really don't use it for myself personally. I can assure you that no children are on Facebook anymore. It's really just for us adults and parents and grandparents. The kids just don't use it. Common Sense Media is one of my favorite resources. They have parenting resources to help you understand about different apps and games and to understand the ratings. Family Online Safety Institute is also in the United States. NSPCC, they have Childline here in the UK. Internet Matters is also here in the UK. Great, great resources. And then again, my own website where you can find things. But please feel free to look anywhere. I write for Internet Matters. I write for Vodafone, for Verizon, for Family Online Safety Institute. Everybody is all one big family. So if you find a resource that works best for you, stick with it, enjoy it, and just keep on sharing. So I've given you the quick tour about everything. And so now let's get to some questions. And just to remind you that you are we're still recording. So
Yeah, so if you're uncomfortable with asking like on the video or even share on the chat, you can share directly to me and I can pass it on. Otherwise, just ask. Yeah.
Hi, I had a question if that's okay.
please, please, I saw you
Hi,
unmute
Elizabeth. Thank you so
immediately.
much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, let's switch the video and quickly got away from my kids for a moment so I can have a quick chat. Thank you so much. That was really, really helpful. And it is something that's quite a hot topic in my house because we've got an 11-year-old. So she's in year 6 and she's just been given a phone. So is quite a
Yes.
big thing right now. I was going to ask whether you could suggest any conversation starters. I know you said to be open, which I
Yes.
completely agree, and I understand that, but without me feeling like I'm prying or
Yes.
I'm trying to be, over controlling. Do you have any suggestions of how? Oh, okay.
It's so funny that you should say that. No, because I do have conversation starters. I have questions, I have books, but there are also conversation starters on Internet Matters as well. And it's really always the same thing. For me, the idea is just to show interest, to ask them questions. But let me put in the chat for you some of the ones that we have from Common Sense Media.
Okay.
I'm sorry, from Internet Matters, because all of these things, they do a great job with trying to help parents get it started. The other thing that I was going to say to you is that, here you go. There's one right there, is that she's like, oh, thank you so much, Reverend Dare. And also thank you as well to Leanne, is that I was asking, you said a phone. You didn't stress if she has or did you say she or he? Is it smartphone? She,
Yes,
smartphone.
yeah, she has a smartphone. We do have
Okay.
parental controls. We have an app. I think it's called Bark, so we can
Yes.
see. Basically, we were kind of conflicted between that, and there's another one which is basically a lockdown, complete lockdown on her phone. And I didn't want to do that because I wanted to give her that independence, and I don't want to make her feel like we don't trust her. So it's this
Exactly.
fine line, and we're kind of at that cusp where I'm struggling a little bit,
Yeah.
because I want to give her that independence and instill some trust and say, yes, no, I trust you, you're fine. But at the same time, I'm like, well, actually, I might trust you, but I don't know what's going on in the group chats, and I don't know what's being said by other people. And she's a little bit quiet in the sense that I think she's at that age where she doesn't share a lot with me. So I feel like I am asking a lot of questions, and she sometimes backs off. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm wondering whether there's any way that I can kind of become more her friend and less her
Exactly.
parent.
You know, and I'm just laughing because there are so, and hang on a second, there's another one. These are not mine, but there's just so many of these things that exist. So here's another example. These are called Our Moments, and they're conversation starters as well. And I mean, these kinds of cards and decks, they exist for everything.
Wow.
And they're just little prompts to get you going. And what I sent to you from Internet Matters is the same thing. I think that with Bark and the fact that you've installed this parental control, just kind of periodically review her with her, like the features and why, and just say, oh, has anything like that happened? You know, did you see anything? Did your friends mention anything? And I wouldn't be afraid to also speak with the other parents of her friends, you know, and just say, hey, we're in this together, so let's help each other out. Maybe my daughter might feel more comfortable talking with you, and your daughter might feel more comfortable speaking with me, but just let them know that you're here, and that you're available, and to keep stressing it. And I know that whether they're 11 or 20, sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm repeating myself, and it is okay. What you don't want to do is to sit there and have, you know, like this whole 2-hour conversation where you're just like going on and on and on. Forget it. Just come in hot every day. And a psychologist once said, it is better to spend 1 minute for 100 days than to sit your child down for 100 minutes and just, so spread out the love.
And I feel like I do that with her, unfortunately. It just kind of, it goes on for a while once I've seen something I don't like, because I feel like I'm drumming that into her head. But then I realize she very quickly switches off and it happens again.
Yes, she's not
the next
listening.
week anyway, so
she's not listening. So we're going to do 1 minute every day. We're just a little bit
thank you. Yeah, no,
forcing
that's a
it.
good idea. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyone else?
Thank you. Anyone else has some more questions? Please use her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
I have a question, please. In what you were saying, Elizabeth, there is a lot of involvement from the parents, and of course, the more the better, because then there's that rapport, there's the trust in it. So how? But you know how children they mind when you, because now in this day and age we are very supportive all the time. So when you actually hit something that you are asking them to not do something because it's, you know, for whatever reason, because of danger, we know that, but they hear that and there's a no in there somewhere. and they turn off.
Yeah.
Is there a way, or are there resources around that parents can actually use with the children online, so that they are not just engaging in speech and then letting the children go back to the devices, but that you are actually on the device, both of you,
Yes.
and you have that communication through that channel?
Yes, yeah. So first, before I give you, for example, Internet Matters has a sort of parenting thing that you can do on an app with your child. Before I even suggest these things, let me just go the easy way. Go for the lazy girl option, which is your child is playing a video game. Your child is on their social media feed. You sit down next to them and you say, let's do this. That is how you're doing this activity together already. Just saying, what is so interesting about this? I heard on the news about, some social media person, show me, can I see, or help me figure it out on my phone, or I want to take a snap. What is that? I want to streak. It's that sort of thing where you are getting involved in their online life, their daily life. That is what helps. Sure, if you want something that is, simple, like I said, Internet Matters has something that you can do. Believe it or not, the Lego group also has a series called Build and Talk, where you can like build and talk with your kids as well. There are lots and lots of resources for that. What I find interesting is that it also kind of reminds me of dieting. There are lots of different diets, right? But unless you find something and you stick to it, it doesn't matter. I can give you 50 diets right now and you're going to say, oh yeah, that one's going to work. So for me, I find again that lazy girl option, whereas whenever you have technology around, ask some questions. Just put on the critical thinking and just make it a game, and ask them about Siri, ask them about the smart assistants, smart speakers. Use what you see on the news. There is so much happening on the news every single day, that you have a teachable moment. And that is, for me, that's the most powerful. Without you having to do something structured, just make it a habit and create that habit, which is better than let me pull out my iPad and find that programmed game that Elizabeth recommended.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Uh,
There was a question in the chat, I
Yeah.
see. How can parents balance the benefits of technology for communication and learning with offline activities and family time? Awesome question. And yeah, it is so difficult, right? I think that for this, again, you can tell that I am a child of the 70s, because I really feel that we have to go old school, right? That we have to get back to that time where we were going outside, where we were playing, where we, took out board games and would play Monopoly and chess and what have you. So I think it's that sort of thing where you balance, you bring in the things from your own childhood that you did or that you dreamed of doing, and bring that alive in your own families. But you can also balance that with the digital. So for example, in my own house, we have Milovidov family movie night, right? And so we pick a movie and we go and we, all sit around. And of course, I know I'm American, even though I've lived in Europe longer than I was in the United States, but it is popcorn and I'm ready to go and just so happy. And that is our thing. What you can also do is we can go on Common Sense Media together and we can look at the film reviews and say, this one looks pretty good. And we know what content is in it because Common Sense Media will tell you what is appropriate, what has profanity, what's showing drugs or has other inappropriate content. So there's no reason not to have something that's exactly perfectly suited to everybody in the family. And while we may have that movie night, we will also have some dedicated time. I think that this whole idea with offline activities and family time, it is so special for us to communicate and to be with our families, because this is where we are sharing the best of ourselves. I once was at a conference and I cannot remember, it was gosh, I can't remember who it was, but she was so high up that it was just like, oh my gosh, and she's talking to me. And she said that if we all just had dinner with our families again, that so much would be changed. And, just having that what we used to do in the 70s, 80s, right? Where we would have dinners with our families, you were talking about your day, you were exchanging about the news. That was, crucial family time. And we don't do as much of that. And same thing with other activities. We have let a lot of things go for the convenience of technology. Things can go so fast and we have so many fabulous opportunities. But here, these are the times when I say we also need to slow down and smell the roses, as they say.
Hi, Elizabeth. Can I just ask, if I've got 3 granddaughters, and one is older and the other one's 9. One is 11. So how do you stop the younger one trying to access the older one's phones and saying to her mum, well, I should have this, I'm nearly her age, that kind of thing, so that there isn't any conflict within the house because the
Yes.
younger one can't have something that the older one has got.
Oh yeah, and this is always a question with siblings, right? And my own boys are 14 and 17, so I go through this still today. What I find really interesting, Ravindir, is if we take the technology out, right? If we're not talking about technology, none of us have any problems explaining to our child, for example, younger children, why they would prefer to write with a crayon because it's more adapted for their hands. It's bigger, it's better than for them to write with an ink pen, for example. There is a time and a place for all of these tools, and that's all that this technology is. It's just another tool. And until we can show a younger child as much joy to be on that thing that is adapted for their age, and to let them know it's a matter of waiting until you're a little bit older. One of the things that I would do in my own house is that when I would spend time with the younger one, so that way the older could go and do something else that was not appropriate, well, that was for his age, but not for the younger age. And then it was just mommy and me time with the younger child, and vice versa. And sometimes I would also ask the older child, hey, let's watch, something that's a bit younger so we can all do this together, or play this game that's a bit younger so we can all do this together. But it is that balancing act, because again, Ravinda, if we were talking about driver's licenses, right? What are we going to say? The older one has the driver's license, went through school, did this, and just because the younger one sees the keys in the car is not the reason why she's going to go drive. But we can still take her out to, I don't know, a car track and let her play around there, or, do something on a bicycle. We can find other activities.
Thank you.
Well, I think now we are ending the session, so thank you, everyone. Thanks, Dr. Elizabeth, for the wonderful, very thoughtful talk. It was really nice. Thanks for the audience as well, the active participation. Of course, all the content that Elizabeth delivered was wonderful, but with the questions that make it even more impactful, because then we are actually is a two-way conversation, right? So more things I added. So before letting you go, I put in the chat a link for a feedback. So it will be really great for to hear what you thought about and what we could improve maybe. And I would also like to remind you that this was just one session of series of webinars for parenting. So I am sharing also a link to a survey. So by answering to the survey, you can help us to give a more suitable content for you, so you can help us shape the program. So thank you very much. Thanks again, Elizabeth, and all of you who made the time to be here. Thank you.